experience. Often hearsay is interchanged with what we know to be the traditional oral telling of our story. We never wrote books, kept great archives. We transported our story through vibration, through word, through storytelling, through song, through vibration. And when I think of that in a more practical sense, it also required a great memory. When we think of the systems of Voodoo and reciting and memorizing needed in order to perform that level of divination, we also think of how our ancestors, our elders, our great-grandparents, our grandparents were able to memorize great volumes of information without gadgets, without technology, without the cell phone remembering all your phone numbers for you. There was a time when we knew all those important numbers in our heads because we had to and because we practiced that. It said that if you don't use it, you lose it. And so if we don't exercise our consciousness, our spirits to consume and absorb these important archives of information about who we are, then the story will always be told by someone else. Another document that I'm borrowing from today, presented to us by Denise Avril at ConjureDoctors.com. Conjure Doctor is a name given to a person who works roots for the purpose of healing or harming and manipulating people, places, and things for a specific purpose. Conjure Doctor holds near and dear the beliefs in conjuration and magic stemming from the ancestral knowledge of his or her forebears, seemingly strange beliefs in the power of herbs, roots, bones, graveyard dirt, and a variety of curious, both natural and human-made, in a variety of curios, both natural and human-made, fill the Conjure Doctor's trick bag. But I would like to offer another perspective of the Conjure Doctor, the Hoodoo practitioner, the Obia. In a time when we didn't have access to the doctor, we didn't have access to the mortician. If you were pregnant and you were to have a baby, you were expected to push it out just as they expected the cow to push it out or the horse to push it out. We were not humanized. So the humanization that was present in that system came from Papa Joe, Mama Janine, Big Mama, Big Papa, who were there with you in that experience, in that moment, in that time, who brought knowledge, awareness, memory of how to use the herbs, how to birth children, how to fix a wound or a sprain, how to heal you after you had been whipped and tortured and mutilated physically by this system of white supremacy and slavery. And so we gained respect, we gained a name, we gained memory through doing for others, through providing a service that might seem magical in an environment where we were not allowed to read, we were not allowed to gather, we were not allowed to show awareness of our knowledge of these sciences of nature, the herbs, the bones, the roots, the dirt. There was a time if you injured your foot or you stepped on a nail, they put in there, they packed dirt in there. And to Western science, that seems like craziness. But the mineral composition in the dirt and the awareness of how to use that was what was masked behind the hoodoo, was masked behind the conjure, but also the belief that we somehow were ignorant, had no reality save for that was born in slavery, that was born here in the Americas, that was somehow we forgot, no longer remembered what we had heard, what we had seen, what was in our DNA memory, what was in our vibrational memory banks tied to rhythms, sounds, syncopation that invoked not only a good feeling, a connection to the motherland, but volumes of knowledge that became a part of the lexicon of words that we use to describe our traditional ways of not only healing, but connecting to nature. We give a lot of credit to Marie Laveau for many reasons, both good or bad, for sort of popularizing, if you will, into pop culture the presence of voodoo in New Orleans. We don't hear enough about Dr. John. Dr. John Montanet is the father of New Orleans voodoo, the Loa drummer and root doctor, the patron male voodoo practitioners and female root workmen. We often acknowledge Dr. John today as we acknowledge ancestors, as we enumerate ancestors in our ceremonies. Dr. John is a figure that we still keep alive. Not much is written about his life, as were many of our lives during that time in history. And prior to recent publications of Dr. John Montanet, a grimoire by Louis Martini, a book that promises to be highly influential in documenting the evolution of New Orleans voodoo in the 21st century. Denise Avril claims to be honored to have contributed a couple of essays to the grimoire, and the following several paragraphs are excerpts from an article she wrote called The Superposition of Dr. John, a Handwriting Investigation. And we spell Dr. John in the French way, J-E, not J-O-H-N, like High John the Conqueror root. The article describes many experiences with Dr. John as a teenager and then culminates in an analysis of his handwriting in an effort to learn more about who he is and who he was. In a show where I don't really have a whole lot of time, I'm going to offer you, those of you who are a part of my Black Hawk Voodoo group, I've already interjected in a post earlier today, conjuredoctors.com. And if you're listening to me, you can always type in conjuredoctors.com. John Martinet, also called Dr. John Bayou, was an African native enslaved to Cuba, where he purchased his freedom and became a slave cook, a ship cook. He settled in New Orleans on Bayou Road sometime before 1845. A fortune teller, it was said he was, a healer, a Grigri doctor. He died and made his transition in 1885 at the age of 70. Dr. John is considered to be the father of New Orleans voodoo. We also give honor and reverence to spiritual mother Maud Shannon of the Spiritualist Church of New Orleans. Today we have a continuing, growing, evolving conflict with quote-unquote religion, with quote-unquote church. And we often forget or don't understand how we were able to maintain our codes, often through synchronization, often through amalgamation. When voodoo reached new grounds, new lands, new continents, it evolved and became something else. And so we acknowledge Lakomi, and we acknowledge Santeria, and we acknowledge Kendable, and we acknowledge Palo. But it's when we start talking about the African born in America, is when we get to that hierarchy system that I talked about earlier in the show. And we are still looking to systems outside of ourselves as somehow being bigger than, greater than. And often our voodoo, out of fear of death, lynching, maiming, in most parts of America, voodoo was uniquely able to flourish and grow and evolve in a way here in Louisiana and ultimately throughout the South in ways that it was not able to in other parts of the so-called New World. And Mother Catherine Field is another said to be mysterious figure because we didn't archive in writing our stories. We learned our stories through experience, through empathizing, through being present, through sitting at the feet of others who lived that experience, and then held them like a capsule in our souls, in our bosom, in our hearts. And Mother Catherine, Chandra McCormick, and Keith Calhoun are both documentary photographers that grew up in the Ninth Ward, and they were said to have grown up hearing about this great healer and how she cared for many people, particularly unwed mothers, in a time when women and unwed mothers were particularly scandalized in our culture of any race, but particularly black unwed mothers. She had her place of being, her Bethlehem, if you will, in the lower Ninth Ward. It was said to be a swampy experience that you had to often traverse through a foot of mud to get to her location. You couldn't bring your chariot, your vehicle, your car in the 1920s to her location. You would at some point have to walk into the bayou to get to her location. And she had healing ceremonies there, took care of these unwed mothers, women who had been in abusive scenarios, who needed somewhere to go. This was long before the concept of domestic violence, long before the concept of women publicly helping women. This great ancestor of ours, Mother Catherine, is often invoked as an ancestor in New Orleans voodoo. And there are many others that I would love to be able to enumerate in a 30-minute show that we give homage to, that we give honor to, that we give recognition for, maintaining the culture, maintaining the tradition, maintaining the mysteries, so that we today, in present time, can continue to show honor and reverence to those who sweat and tear, and to elevate that power, that knowledge, to elevate them through our own endeavors to a higher level. Until next time, I remind you to always remember that all is truly and indeed a blessing if you can just see beyond the veils, for it's all just an illusion and a test in one of the greatest divine mysteries of this life cycle. Until next time, peace.
Dash of cayenne to the root. Gonna put on my grease suit. boil a gumbo.